very nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay.
So how many of you design your own irrigation systems, or are you like looking to start designing your own irrigation systems?
We've done. I usually have my boss do the irrigation systems, but I want to learn it myself. Yeah, I usually lay out the plantings and can figure out the WELO water requirements, but the irrigation system I would find a little bit of a challenge.
Yeah, there are some classes that I know I took some classes at Texas with one of the instructors that's really good at it. But I also went to a lot of these local talks when they have these talks on water conservation. And I think it's through the Master Gardeners. They have a lot of information on irrigation.
Okay.
Foothill has really good classes about irrigation also.
Okay.
And purification. But I think as designers, we are not allowed to do irrigation plans anymore.
Yes, I think you have to be licensed either as an irrigator or, you know, what I found that the smaller projects is much easier because they don't have too many requirements. But on the larger, like Atherton jobs, they're very specific.
Is that just in California? Or
because of the new ordinance, all these cities have to comply and they have to show that they did their part. So in order to show that, they have to make sure that the plans are compliant and they have to get it audited. If it's over certain square footage, they have to get it audited by a third party person.
Hey gang, I'm going to have to exit. I got to run to a project right quick. It was a pleasure, guys.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Harold. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much, Harold.
Very
Harold
good.
has a lot of information. He knows everything about irrigation. So
Yes, very good, Harold. Thank you, Rahina.
Okay, then.
Okay.
See y'all later.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All
This
right.
was great.
yeah. All right. Any other questions?
Now, I was just wondering, Rina, for all the paperwork you showed for the irrigation, do you have to present all that every time with a new project? All that is required now? The 25% grass?
Which one? The
when you named things like 25% lawn and all that, is it required for every project here in the area?
Well, the thing with the lawn thing is, even if you exceed the 25%, it will show up in your estimated total water usage. So you don't want to, you know, even because I have several developers, all they want to do is lawn. Yeah. And sometimes I can't do that because it doesn't, the water usage will like stop you from doing it. But you do have to stay within the percentage. The cities are not that picky about it as long as you're within the total water usage.
Okay, but does it vary depending on the county, or is it for the whole California?
It varies on the, you know, whoever's enforcing it. So if it's like, you know, certain cities are very picky about water usage. Okay. Some others, like when I submit plans, I don't even get any comments. You know, like Campbell and some of the other cities, they don't even comment on it. But it could be that on the smaller projects, they're not that particular. Okay. And on the, as the project gets more and more like lawn and water use intensive, then they become more selective. Okay. And also if it's a private, you know, like the Great America Park was a private company and they had their own water source. So none of the plants had to be drought tolerant because the water was coming from a local, you know, lake. So it was not the city water.
All right.
You know, the city didn't need to permit it because the water was right there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. If anybody has any other questions, let me know and we'll follow up. I would love to see more, you know, more landscape-oriented folks, you know, be part of the conversation.
So this was amazing that you had Harold on here with, and it was really interesting looking at those commercial plans for the hotels or motels. Yeah,
Harold is like, you know, I don't think without him my practice would close because he is just so good at irrigation. Like,
but he's in Texas and you're up here. Are you guys still collaborating?
Yeah, actually, because I only work with him on the irrigation part. So the hydrozone part, Because when I worked for a company that did, all the irrigation as well as hydrozone, I know that part of it. But
Yeah.
for the irrigation, because sometimes, not all sites are the same, and sometimes there are like unusual conditions, and
Right.
so that's why I work with him. So he can, and I've sent him the MVLO, like the ordinance itself,
Right.
so he knows like what they're looking for.
So is the situation in Texas and California similar, right? Because of the water scarcity.
Well, Texas is not, Texas is much more regulated for irrigation. So on commercial projects, you have to be a licensed irrigator to work on a commercial project. Whereas here, you don't have that requirement. You
Okay.
don't have, I think Texas, it's more because they want to reduce water wastage because Texas is more flood prone.
Uh-huh.
And they have an agency called the Texas Environmental Quality Commission or something, TCEQ or something, that regulates the overall, the cities by themselves, they're not that particular. But
Right.
the TCEQ, they look for certain things, and one of them is licensed irrigator.
Okay.
So I've not been able to, even though I've tried to work with local irrigators, I find that it's much more specialized in Texas. Yeah, and they don't have a requirement for licensed irrigator here. So,
Yeah, we do have irrigation auditors, so there are specialty jobs within irrigation.
Yes. So the auditors are the companies that the owner hires, like the third-party companies.
Yeah.
So they have to have a certain certification or something, but I've not directly worked with them. Usually the owner hires them and I interact with them, but I don't deal directly with them.
Right.
And
right.
so for me, like Harold is like the go-to person because like he's worked primarily on irrigation and he pretty much, even if the town has questions, he answers most of those questions.
Oh, it's good that you know him. I had a question about lawns, in that if you pick a kind of a lower water planting, there are some, Delta Bluegrass or all these different companies come out with these like low water grasses.
Yeah.
It still is in the category of lawn, but if it's a lower water lawn, do the regulatory bodies treat it differently?
Yeah, so in Palo Alto, when I used, I think it was like Carex, some kind of Carex that I used.
Yeah, Carex
it's considered no more grass,
Uh-huh.
no more lawn, and they took that into account because the plant factor is less than 0.3.
Okay.
So you're able to classify that as a moderate water use. They don't allow it as low water use, but
Okay.
you can categorize it under the moderate water use. So that's good.
Right. And so if you were to put in, say, this thing, quote unquote, a meadow, and it's serving sort of as a negative space as a lawn would, but you would like treat it differently, maybe the mowing would be a lot different. Would this regulatory people also treat it as a lawn, or you would just say this is a meadow, or how would that go through in your design reviews to the city?
It depends on the plant factor because they always go by that Buchholz plant rating.
Okay,
You can't, I've tried to go around the system a little bit because I try to get as much variety as possible in the plan.
Right.
So it's like balanced out. If there's lawn, I do try to minimize it, but then if the client wants a certain amount, I try to give them what they want.
Yes.
So it depends on the plant factor. So if you can get the meadow to be low water use, all the plants are like low water use, then you can get away with it. But if the
Okay.
meadow has certain plants that are I know some perennial plants tend to be moderate or high water use, then you can't because a lot of times you just have to, that has to be listed in the table that you submit.
Right,
so they catch you on that, and then they even pick out which plants, if you categorize them wrongly, sometimes I've had them say, okay, this is a high water use plant again.
Right, like if you put in pink muley, which is not super drought tolerant, for example, but
yeah, even the fern, I had to justify that it was in full shade, and that's why I wanted to use it as a low water use plant. And then they said, oh, okay, we'll consider that.
yeah, it's a multi-dimensional kind of ball that they're looking at. And you're
Yeah.
looking at, as you said, the conditions matter versus
Yeah.
evapotranspiration, the fact that it's in shade versus something else. Yeah.
Yeah, like now the green roof, I'm having trouble because the auditor is like, well, on the roof it's extremely windy, and so the water use is going to be very, very high. So I want to see a schedule, irrigation schedule. And I don't do irrigation schedules because I'm not a contractor. So whoever submits the irrigation schedule, they have to make sure that, it's not considered a high water zone.
Is that going to be, is Harold going to help you with the roof?
So
Or
he did the irrigation part. So he designed the irrigation system, but he won't audit the system, and he won't be the contractor installing it.
Right. No, he's in Texas. Okay. Yes,
Yeah,
green
he just
roofs.
does the design part.
Green roofs was such a popular alternative, but there's a lot of actually problems with them.
Yeah, there is actually, especially in California, because of fire, a lot of times you can't use certain plants, and people are a little careful about having so much planting on the roof. And plus it gets very windy. So you have to worry about water loss because of the windy conditions.
Right. It's almost like you can't have a green roof retrofitted. I mean, because the whole structure needs to be that much more sound to support that extra soil. It's really an interesting problem.
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of buildings are already pre-designed to take on a little bit of additional load.
Uh-huh.
So in certain, like in the UK, what they did was they looked at the benefits of having green roofs on existing buildings, and they did a study of the existing structure, how much additional load it can take. And they found that most buildings are already designed to take on like a minimum, like 20 pounds per square foot. So if you keep your green roof within that, you can still have green roofs, like basic, like sedum and grasses.
Okay. Yeah.
And that helps in water conservation. It helps in stormwater management. It's got so many benefits that they're actually going, like if you look at University of Manchester, they've retrofitted entire buildings in the campus. They have a retrofit plan to add more green roofs.
So did anybody do an analysis, kind of a carbon footprint or ecological impact as to whether the roof is better used for solar or for planting?
Yeah, actually that's an interesting question, because I was very interested in green roofs, and I presented at conferences because I worked on a couple of them. And one of the things they said is that if you have a combination of a green roof with a solar panel, the solar panels are more efficient because it helps with the cooling of the green roof. So it's always better to have, like the city of San Francisco, now they have a green roof ordinance. And they've said that, at least, I think there's a percentage. So you should have at least 20% green roof, even if you have solar panels, because the green roofs help you cool down the solar panels.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Interesting. Just because they're evaporating, they're putting moisture out there, and
Yeah, they actually, they lower the temperature at the roof level. And at a lower temperature, the solar panels are more efficient.
oh, right. They
So-
have a temperature region that they work best at. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think I read that at the San Francisco ordinance. They have a better roofs ordinance. And one of the things they said that there's some research on how efficient solar panels are, and they find that the combination of solar and green roof is the most efficient one.
Yeah. In decades past, solar water heaters used to be something people liked, and I don't really hear too much about those as far as, what can you do with that rooftop space?
Yeah.
And the fact that it gets so hot up there, you're thinking, well, okay, you could have your solar panels, you could have your plantings, and maybe you can produce hot water.
Yeah, I was in a electric conversion, converting homes to electric webinar, and they were talking about these solar panels and the water heaters. In some countries, water heaters are very popular. You just have this water heater on the roof, and the entire house gets supplied with hot water. But here, I haven't seen too many of those. I'm not
No,
sure on
you
that.
see them for swimming pools, but I'm not sure. I lived in a house in Laguna Beach where there was a solar water heater, but that must have been installed quite a while ago, and I haven't heard of them since. But I do see in, this Bay Area, people with the black equipment that on their roof that heats the water that goes to the pool.
Yeah, I think that any kind of conversion or upgrade is great. If you're interested, I can send you some information. I was part of this in a conference where they had a presentation on electric conversions, and they're talking about this carbon footprint of buildings and how gas stoves and gas appliances cause a lot of indoor air pollution.
Yeah.
So to restrict that, it's like a building commission that their main mission is to convert to electric. And, they talk about all the benefits and.
Yeah, that's a more recent happening. They want to, I guess people are worried about the old infrastructure and the gas lines since San Bruno.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was very nice. Thank you so much for joining in.
If you have a way of figuring out or propagating that note about Foothill College seeking faculty, if you have some organization you can send it to, or maybe, I don't know if you want to consider it yourself or somebody you know.
I actually applied. I sent in my application just to see what the response would be. I don't know what,
Operating in pandemic mode, right? So everything's slower.
Oh, okay. I think I did get like an email, like an automated email, but I didn't, other than that, I didn't get any other information.
Yeah. Who knows what exactly is going on as far as, the work is all kind of being, affected. So
you're a full-time student there?
I've been a full-time student. I've been taking classes over the years, and I'm primarily a fine gardener now, with this working pretty exclusively with California native plants and design and installation and maintenance.
So you work with CNPS?
No, they're not a, I mean, I'm a member, but they're an information organization. They're not a working group per se.
Oh, okay.
They have several aspects to them. Like there's that, I don't know if you've ever used their database, Calscape.
Yes.
That's quite nice if if some homeowners want to pursue it themselves as a hobby, and so then they can type in their address and find their local natives, as you talked about during the last webinar.
Yeah.
So
that one was full of information. I'm still, I still have so much to learn about native plants.
Yeah, well, you're a transplant, so then you have to learn a whole new palette almost, right? I mean, some things translate, but it must be a bit difficult.
The first few years, yeah, because I was just going by what I see, and what I see is mostly commercially used non-natives.
Yeah.
So it took a while for me to understand, oh, these are the bad plants. I need to use a palette of like the good plants.
Yeah. Hopefully people will get educated and switch, but I think part of it has to be ordinances within cities, because sometimes the ordinance is a way of educating the end user as opposed to giving them, I'm just going to do Indian hawthorn, but you're like, well, you could use these 5 other native choices, which give you much better like disease management and water usage and then habitat. So.
Yeah. I noticed that, I have to educate my clients on killing trees, because people just kill trees like crazy, they just.
Because they stop watering their lawns, you mean?
Not stop watering the lawns, like if they have on a property that's to be developed.
Yes, and they'll trench or something.
Yeah, and there are protected trees that are over the minimum, like 12-inch diameter. They're protected oak trees, and still they get killed, because the city has such a low requirement. You just replace it with 3 trees. But those 3 trees are small. They're not like 30-year-old trees.
Yeah, people don't realize the value. One of the arborists around here has this clever way to deal with trenching. He's like, if you want to put pipe pretty close to a tree and it's, actually a tree's root system goes even beyond its strip line. But if you're within that zone, he recommends using an air spade. So you kind of, it's more labor intensive, but you kind of dig around the roots and you can blow out some of the soil from under the roots and then put in your pipe.
Uh-huh.
And you don't have to cut through those roots. And that's kind of an important kind of perspective that, I don't know, I guess I'm thinking construction people and contractors need to go in for some basic class about the value of trees so they know, because
Yeah.
I think people operate from ignorance, and if they knew the importance, and as you're saying, you know, a 30-year-old tree, it's hard to replace 30 years of growth with 3
Yeah.
new trees.
Yeah, and even the cities themselves, the planners themselves, they're not on the side of they want to please the owners, you know, and they want to get the development dollars, I guess. So they're like, oh yeah, but you know, if it's in the footprint of the building, well, every building will have trees in the footprint. So you have to work around the trees, you know. They just put this large square box on the lot, and then whatever tree comes in the way is gone. I've worked on projects where like 30 trees are like in one site, and because some of them are eucalyptus or they're not considered useful trees, they just get mixed all together. But anyway, that's a topic for another. We can go on talking about trees and
complaining,
I would love
yes.
to, yeah.
Actually,
So
several of us are looking at ordinances and which cities do have them for various protection of plantings, or because sometimes you know, real estate changes hands and somebody will have actually a very valuable garden and the next person doesn't. It's kind of like, you know, you have houses that with historic designations and you can't do so much to them. It's almost
Yeah.
like certain valuable plantings, like famous gardens, will just get bulldozed. It's just amazing. It's pretty terrible.
I think the only city that I've seen that is very picky and particular is Saratoga. They're extremely
Protective. Yeah. Okay. Maybe I'll look at some of those because I was wondering if I could move something locally in my own city.
in your own city, which is
Los Altos Hills.
oh, okay. Okie doke. Well,
Okie
thank
doke.
you all for so much for joining in.
All right. Take care. Have a good weekend. Bye.
All right, you too.